If you grew up in the Midwest, you probably know the kind of towns where everybody waves at everybody, one gas station, one bar, one church, maybe one school, the kind of place where winter is serious business and the lake shapes everyday life. But today, we're heading to a town that takes remote small-town America to an entirely different level. A town so isolated that to drive there from the rest of Minnesota, you actually have to go through Canada first. A town with fewer than 60 year-round residents. A town that exists because of a mistake on a map more than 240 years ago. This is the story of Angleinlet, Minnesota, the northernmost community in the United States. Welcome to Midwest Small Town. This is Dan, your host, and your small town enthusiast. And today, of course, we are going clear up to the northern portion of Minnesota, actually, really kind of in Canada, really. And let's just talk about that just for a minute. Angleinlet sits in a strange little patch of Minnesota called the Northwest Angle. If you look at a map, it almost looks wrong. Minnesota suddenly pokes upward into Canada like someone accidentally bumped the border while drawing it. And honestly, that's not far from the truth. Back in 1783, after the American Revolution, the United States and Great Britain were trying to decide where the border should go, and the Treaty of Paris said that the border would run through the Lake of the Woods to the northernmost point of the lake and then continue west to the Mississippi River, and there lies the problem. The map makers at the time had no idea where the Mississippi River actually started, and so they thought the river began much farther north, and the maps of the lakes of the woods were wildly inaccurate too. Years later, surveyors realized that the geography didn't work the way everybody thought it did, but instead of redrawing everything completely, they just adjusted the border, and in 1818, by running a line south from the northwestern point of the lake down to the 49th parallel. That tiny adjustment accidentally created this isolated piece of American territory cut off by Canada. And just like that, the Northwest Angle was born. A geographic accident and a huge mistake, but a tiny American outpost surrounded by Canadian wilderness and water. Today, Angleinlet has a population of around 54 people, not 5,400, 54. Depending on the season, there may be more fishermen, resort workers, vacation homeowners around, but year-round residents are incredibly few. And life there is unlike almost anywhere else in America. If residents want to drive to the rest of Minnesota, they have to cross into Manitoba, Canada. Then they got to drive south back to the United States. That means everyday errands can involve international border crossings. Imagine needing a passport just to go grocery shopping. Imagine your school trip involving custom checkpoints. Imagine telling people your nearest American town is technically in another country. And that's normal life at Angleinlet. Locals often just call it the Angle. And despite the isolation, the people who live there, they tend to love it. And the community is tiny, it's tight-knit, it's deeply tied to the outdoors. And a lot of online users actually who are familiar with the area describe it as a place where everyone pretty much knows each other, with fishing, wilderness, the solitude defining everyday life. In many ways, it represents the purest form of small-town living left in America. One of the most fascinating things about Angleinlet is its school. The town is home to the last one-room schoolhouse in the entire state of Minnesota. Think about that for just a second. In an age of tablets, smartboards, a giant suburban campus, there's still a place where students of different ages learn together in a single classroom. Now, there are a lot of really cool one-room schoolhouses that I've seen recently in the Midwest, They are in a museum setting mostly. There was a really cool one in De Smet, South Dakota. If you go to the Laura Ingalls Wilder Museum, they have one there. You can go to the Laura Ingalls Wilder Homestead. They have one there that's also in De Smet. You can go up to Jamestown, North Dakota. They have a really cool one there too. As you kind of go off the interstate there, they have the world's largest buffalo. And right, I would say maybe less than 400 yards away, you can see a one-room schoolhouse that they have there on their property. Pretty cool. You can go to Kimball, South Dakota. If you go to the South Dakota Tractor Museum, they have a one-room schoolhouse. But again, these are not functioning as a school anymore. They're actually a museum, like I said before. And here you have one where they're actually using it as such. So for a small town, isolated, it totally makes sense, right? And honestly, there's something deeply Midwestern about it. The one-room schoolhouse isn't just a building. It's a symbol. It represents the idea that no matter how remote a community becomes, people still find a way to keep it alive, even at the top edge of America. Now let's talk about the northernmost this and that. Angle Inlet and the Northwest Angle hold a surprising number of geographic titles. It's the northernmost point in the lower 48 states. That's number one. Number two, the northernmost community in the United States. Number three, the northernmost post office in the lower 48. And even one of the northernmost schools and golf courses in the continental U.S. And because of all that, tourists love visiting. There's a famous marker that you can travel to just to stand at the top of the lower 48 states, so you can go there, you can get pictures, and of course people do that. It's one of those places where people take photos just to prove that they made it there. But unlike many tourist attractions, the journey is part of the experience. Getting to Angle Inlet can involve long drives through forest, crossing borders, boat rides across the Lake of the Woods, snowmobile trails, or even ice roads in winter. And in winter, this place becomes a different world entirely. The winters in Angle Inlet are no joke. Northern Minnesota already gets brutal cold. And I'll tell you right now, being from the northwest corner of Iowa, I thought I knew brutal cold. But it seems like when you look at the map, if you're looking at South Dakota, if you're looking at Minnesota, the further north you go, the colder it gets. And this is no joke. The winters in Angle Inlet, again, are absolutely some of the most brutal. Northern Minnesota already gets that. But of course, Angle sits even farther north than most people realize and experiences some of the harshest winter conditions in the U.S. The lake freezes solid. Roads disappear. Ice roads sometimes replace regular routes, and daily life depends on weather in a way most Americans no longer understand. There's something old-fashioned about that, something deeply connected to nature. The people there can't simply just ignore winter. They adapt to it. They live with it, and honestly, that's part of what makes places like Angle Inlet feel so authentic. It's not manufactured small-town charm. It's real. And if there's one thing that truly powers the local economy, it's fishing. Angle Inlet sits on the Lake of the Woods, one of the most famous fishing lakes in North America. Now, I have been there. I was a kid. We went on a walleye fishing excursion. I can tell you, the Lake of the Woods is huge. I didn't even realize how big it was, and of course, as a kid, it probably even seemed even bigger. But I remember being out in the middle. Waves are just going. You can barely see the shore. It's a big lake, and Angle Inlet sits, of course, on that. And walleye fishing especially draws the visitors from all over the Midwest. Many of the local businesses are fishing resorts, guide services, and for generations, tourists have made the trip north for the chance to catch a trophy fish and experience wilderness that still feels untouched. In some ways, Angle Inlet survives because people still crave places like this, quiet places. Water stretching forever, no traffic, no chain stores. I say no crowds, but in reality, it gets a little busy in the summer months as fishing kind of gets a little bigger, but just woods, water, and of course, the beauty of the northernmost weather. And I tell you what, it's beautiful. It really is. You should really go up to northern Minnesota. Check that out. One of the strangest moments, by the way, in modern Angle Inlet history happened during COVID-19 pandemic. When the U.S.-Canada border closed, residents and businesses at the Angle suddenly faced enormous challenges because the easiest land route required driving through Canada. And tourism collapsed. Fishing resorts struggled, and residents felt more isolated than ever. Some winter ice roads helped reconnect the community temporarily, but the pandemic revealed something most Americans had never thought about. There are still places in this country where geography controls daily life. Angle Inlet isn't just remote, it's dependent on international cooperation simply to function normally. Now that's incredibly unique. So, why do people stay in a place like this? Why stay? Why live in one of the most isolated towns in America? And the answer is probably the same reason people stay in tiny towns all across the Midwest. Because it's home. Because families have been there for generations. Because people know each other. Because there's peace. And because some people would rather hear loons on the lake than traffic on a highway. Residents and longtime visitors often describe the Angle as beautiful, quiet, deeply personal, and the kind of place that becomes part of your identity once you spend enough time there. And in a world growing louder and busier every day, maybe Angle Inlet feels like the opposite of modern life. And maybe that's exactly why people love it. So as we're coming close to the close of this podcast, let me give you a few gold nuggets if you're planning on making a trip like this. How do you get there? Well, you have a couple of options on this one, 3 really main ones. You can do the driving route, and many take that. It's a 40-mile overland drive from Minnesota, go up to Manitoba, passing through customs before re-entering the U.S. Angle. That's one way. Here's the second one. You can take the passenger ferry. Visitors who want to avoid customs, they can take this seasonal 2.5-hour ferry across the lake directly from the Minnesota mainland. So that's option number 2. And here is option number 3, float planes. So high-end travelers and lodge guests often charter float planes to land directly on the water outside their resort. So there are some options on how you can get there. So where do you stay? Well, here's a couple options. Fishing lodges. A dozen classic family-owned resorts line the waterfront, offering cabin rentals. You can take guided boat charters, and of course, there's much, much more to that. So you can go online, you can check that. So fishing lodge is one. And here's another one. You can take what they call a no passport transit. Resorts frequently coordinate direct lake transport during the winter enclosed track vehicles called bombardiers that drive over the thick lake ice. So there's an option too. If you are an ice fisherman and you want to go up there, that might be something to put on your bucket list. So of course, there is all sorts of specific lodging options for you and fishing charters that you can look into. Go ahead and check that out. But again, Angle Inlet, Minnesota. Who would have thought? What a unique small town. No doubt about it, it fits the list for Midwest small town, and it's easy to overlook on a map. Most Americans will never go there. Many have never even heard of it. That's mainly why I'm putting it on my channel, just to kind of shed a light on some of these unknown places, or a little quieter for the rest of us. But somehow, this tiny place tells a much bigger story. A story about borders, about geography, about how mistakes have become history, about resilience, and of course, about the stubborn persistence of a small town life in America. And I don't want to pick on my northern neighbor being in Iowa. Let's say the more northern you get in Minnesota, maybe the more stubborn you get. And a Minnesotan probably will look down at me and say, "Hey, you Iowegian." So we can have a little laugh on that. But think about this. 54 people, one schoolhouse, one little piece of Minnesota that accidentally ended up north of Canada. And somehow, it still feels unmistakably Midwestern. And that's one thing to love about it. The Midwest small town at its best. This is Dan, and you've been listening to Midwest Small Town.